Hey, Craig.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Cascade Charter Township Planning Commission meeting to order for Monday, November 15th, 2021. And we will start by recording the attendance. All members are present with the exceptions of member Korsnich and member Nordike, who are excused this evening. And with that, if you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the current agenda.
So move.
Support.
Thank you, Member Moxley and Member Deering for that motion. All those in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Article 4, disclose any conflict of interest. Does anyone have any conflicts regarding tonight's agenda items they wish to disclose?
I may have something for the Patterson Ice Center. My oldest boy has played hockey there since he was 3. And it's the current home ice for Davenport, which is who he plays for right now. So I don't know.
I don't necessarily have an issue with that, but does anybody else feel that's a concern?
Okay.
No. Okay.
Great, thanks.
Then we will proceed. Thank you. And with that, Article 5, acknowledge any visitors wishing to speak. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. We have 4 agenda items tonight, one of which is slated for public hearing, and that's the one regarding a residence on McCord's. But the other items are not slated for public hearing. So the item on McCord's, the Warren residence, that will have its own public hearing. But if you wish to speak on any other matter, aside from that one, this would be your opportunity. If you wish to speak, you can come to the microphone, state your name and address. If you're joining us via Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically to speak or press *9 if you're on the telephone. Anybody wish to make a comment? Seeing and hearing none, I'm assuming we have nobody on Zoom, Jessica? Okay, then we will move forward. Our first case is Article 6, case number 3682, Warren Residence public hearing for the application, or the applicant is requesting approval of a special use permit for an accessory building over 832 square feet. Let's move forward.
Can you hear me again, Scott?
I can hear you, Brian.
All right. So I apologize for not being able to be there in person tonight, but I think this will be able to work all right for everyone. So the applicant's requesting a type 1 special use permit to allow for an accessory building over 832 square feet. The property is located on McCord's Avenue between 52nd and 60th Streets. The building will have a total size of approximately 1,561 square feet, and it has a height of 14 feet tall measured to the midpoint of the roof. So that height requires a setback of 10 feet to the side property line to 25 feet to the rear. And the site plan shows them meeting those requirements with a long distance to the rear and an 11-foot setback to the side property line. The building will also have to be at least 10 feet from the house. The property is just under 3 acres, so they are allowed to have 1 accessory building. There is a small 8x10 shed on the property, and the applicant is applying for a variance in order to keep that building. If their variance request is denied, that shed will then have to be removed. During the site visit, the applicant indicated they'd like to access the building directly from the street. So any new access would need to be approved by the Kent County Road Commission. The applicants indicated that they plan to use the building as a workshop and for general storage. The building will have a shingled roofing and vinyl siding to match the house, and the size of the building is normal for the zoning district. The applicant appears to meet our standards for an accessory building. So at this time, staff are recommending approval of the special use permit with the 3 following conditions, along being in compliance with all other zoning regulations, that the building is not used for living space or to run a business, that any outdoor lighting meets our regulations, and any new access to the street must be approved by the Kent County Road Commission.
Thank you. Any questions of staff at this time?
I have one.
Yes, Member Maxley.
Is the house still under construction?
I don't believe, it looks, when during the site visit, it looks like it's all finished. I don't believe there's any work going on the site anymore.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Does the applicant have anything to add? Is the applicant present?
Yes, I am. The house is finished.
Why don't you step up to the microphone and give us your name and address for the record for the person that'll do these minutes later?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Warren. My address is 5650 McCords Avenue Southeast, Alto, Michigan, 49302. Just to answer the question about whether or not the house is finished, it was finished last year of November. So
Great.
about a year old.
Thank you. Any other questions of the applicant? And this is the purpose of the building. I think it's sitting here is just for storage. Is
Yes,
that-
sir. Yep. We're going to do a workshop and storage.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
not for a business use or extra residential space, just for general storage use and workshop.
I take it you're familiar with the staff recommendation then that it can't be used for business. and
Exactly.
Any
Yep.
lighting will meet our approval, and as well as the driveway, if you'll get that through the road commission.
Yes, sir.
If you
Yep.
choose to. Okay. All right. Any other questions of the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
One other question,
Oh,
just
yeah.
given our conversation last week, given the close proximity to the property line, will you be doing any surveys to make sure that that is precisely more than 10 feet beyond that?
We have a current survey on file just from when we did the build itself. So we have it all plotted out and we have stakes from the, the original survey, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And that was conducted, probably about 18 months ago or so.
Okay. As long as you have some stakes to go by, sounds like you're on the right track.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Member Rappin, for that one. No. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, I would entertain a motion to go to public hearing.
I'll move
So-
on to the public hearing.
Support.
Thank you, Member Rappin. Thank you for the support, Member Moxley. All those in favor of public hearing, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, if anybody wishes to make a statement regarding this matter, now is your opportunity. And if you're joining us on Zoom, raise your hand electronically, or if you're on the telephone, press *9, and we'll get you connected. If you're here in the room, feel free to run right up. And I see nobody indicating that they wish to speak on this matter, so I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
So moved.
Thank you, Member Deering. Thank you, Member Rappin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. Okay. Any discussion or questions on this matter or action? Looks pretty straightforward to me.
I'd like to make motion.
I'd like that, Member Moxley.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve case number 21-3682 with the staff recommendations included in that.
Thank you. Do we have support?
Support.
Thank you, Member Deering, for the support. Motion to approve with staff conditions. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Congratulations. You're all set. Okay, moving on to Article 7, Redmond Cascade Roadhouse. This is the one I think we tabled last week. Application requesting site plan review for a new 480 square foot covered structure. We talked about this a bit last week. Brian, you want to give us an update on this one?
Sure. So, yep, it was tabled last week, and the reason for that kind of centered around information from the applicant of how that outdoor space would be used, if it'd be used for an outdoor seating area year round and what that might look like. So I did call the applicant, and they said they would prefer to use that area year round, similar to how they use that interior courtyard area of the restaurant. So I told them that, we'll have this again on the agenda tonight, and I should plan on being here because it sounds like you guys would have some questions for them. So I'm hoping they're in the audience there.
Okay, thank you, Brian. I believe it was Wendy that asked, Member Kirsten that asked the question on that, right? That had the concern with that?
Right.
Okay.
I believe it was, yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, she's not here tonight, but is the applicant present or somebody on the applicant's behalf? Could you step up a minute and we could talk and just state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is David Graff. I live at 345 Gladstone Drive in East Grand Rapids.
Thank you. So I think the concern here that was raised was there was quite questions regarding how this area would be enclosed. I think the description we were given referred to kind of a transparent roof area, but there wasn't any discussion of what walls may cover this area. Am I phrasing this correctly? Is the way you guys remember? Yes, I'm getting some nods, so I must be on the right track. Do you have any information regarding what type of walls or what this structure would potentially look like?
Sure. Keep in mind that it is in a courtyard area, three-sided courtyard area.
Correct.
So the roof that we have planned is a greenhouse roof that will go to the very edge of the adjacent walls.
Okay,
And at the end, at the backside, it will actually go over that roof a couple of feet. So the only open area is at the front. And our intention is to use the clear vinyl curtains that we've used inside around the courtyard.
okay. Okay, so you'll have clear vinyl curtains that would go down in the wintertime, I'm assuming, or the cold
Yes.
weather, and in the summer they would be
Right.
rolled up, so to speak.
We actually snap them into place and then remove them altogether.
Okay, all right. Okay, anybody have any questions of the applicant on that? Member Moxley?
Does the new canopy project out any further towards Cascade Road than the existing building walls?
No. No. It lines up equal with the two adjacent buildings on each side.
Okay, great.
Yes, Member Nordhook.
You're enclosing it for the winter. I assume you're gonna have heaters out there. How are we ventilating that for carbon monoxide?
Well, the question is very much up in the air if it's going to be heated. But if it is, it would be most likely a portable gas stove or fireplace that would be vented up through that, the roof.
Okay, thank you.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but this,
Yes, Member Rapp.
last week's discussion was subject to the enclosure being reviewed by the fire department for safety along those lines.
Yeah, their concern was with the egress, which we've already addressed that.
Okay.
What they were talking about was he saw that there was going to be a fence across the front, which there now is, and didn't realize that we had made provision for exit out of that, through that opening.
Okay.
So as far as I know, that was the objection that Brian informed me about.
Forgive me for being fundamentally confused.
Yes, Member Merlin.
It's a common trait. Is this on the front side facing Cascade Road?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Okay, so you're leaving the back courtyard as it is.
Just the way it is. Right.
Okay, and right now you have nothing in that courtyard, do you?
No, actually, when we did the original redo of the place, we paved this courtyard area. And the idea was that we would see what happened. It turns out that with COVID, many people are going back, they're going in and signing up and then going back out into their cars because there's not a place for them. And what we wanted was additional waiting area. And that's what this is intended to do. But it had tables and chairs from the onset.
Wow, I eat there at least once every other week and I've never noticed it, but
And it's partially is because we never really pushed it. It was there kind of as an overflow, but it was never really
okay.
promoted.
So it's more of a waiting area than a dining area?
Well, if business lends itself to a dining area, we'll do dining.
Okay.
But as it stands right now, it is intended to be an overflow for people to get a drink, be able to be comfortable and not have to be out in their car or stacked up in the courtyard. There's a bench that they were kind of standing around and overcrowding. So, yeah.
All right. Sounds like a good solution to a problem. Anyone else have any other questions of the applicant? Okay, I'm assuming you guys are familiar with the staff recommendations that we've been made aware of, that the applicant complies with the township engineering letter dated October 26th. All necessary permits are obtained before construction begins. Record the stormwater maintenance agreement. And the third one, any exterior lighting will need to meet township regulations.
We were unable to get the lighting because it's not clear how it's going to be laid out at this point. So
Okay.
when we get that, we'll do that. And the other requirements are not an issue.
Okay, all right.
Where does your stormwater go now?
There is a 10-foot strip along the entire front, 110 feet of foliage and landscaping that we've used and had engineered that we would be able to continue to use that for this. What we'll do is we'll direct it more into long drainage tubes against the building, so it will drain out to that area. The concern is that it would be flowing across the sidewalk, which we don't see that as being any kind of an issue. So.
Anybody else have any other concerns or questions? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
We'll let you
Thank
know
you.
if we need your help. All right. With that, I guess any discussion on this matter? Anybody wish to take a stab at it? Looks straightforward to me.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Member Moxley, for motion to approve with staff conditions.
Yes, case number 21-3669 for the John Rabideau Cascade Roadhouse with the staff conditions applying to that.
Thank you. Do we have support?
Support.
Thank you, Member Rappin, for support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. All right, moving right along to Article 8, case number 21-3632, Gold Dental Properties, 3636 Craft. Recommendation to the Township Board for the PUD ordinance amendment. Brian, where are we at on this one?
So we just had this one at our last meeting for that preliminary plan and the site plan review. So once that was approved, then staff goes and writes the actual PUD amendments that'll be made to the ordinance. So we wrote those up. They've been reviewed by the applicant and addressed the approval that was made at the November 8 meeting. And I believe this ordinance amendments accurately reflect that decision from that meeting. So if the planning commission agrees, then you should forward a positive recommendation to the township board for approval of the PUD amendment and site plan. And then the township board will hold an additional public hearing to consider the recommendation.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions of staff on this? No? Okay. Does anybody have any other comments or concerns to discuss? Or a motion to recommend recommended to the township board for amendment?
I would move to recommend a positive recommendation to the board for approval.
Thank you for the motion, Member Rappin, and the support, Member Deering. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, moving right along at a record pace, I might add. We are to Article 9. I have a feeling this one's not going to go quite as fast, but Article 9, case number 21-3681, Patterson Ice Center LLC. Basic plan review for an amendment to the PUD ordinance to lift a number of existing use and development restrictions. And yeah, so anybody have any thoughts on this? Brian, where are we at?
Sure. So as you mentioned there, so the applicant's requesting a basic plan review at this time to amend the existing PUD to remove a number of existing use and development restrictions that are in place. So this is basically an introduction to their request at this time. These restrictions were put in place when the PUD was created back in 1994. This request is a little different from the others that we've received, since there are no changes to the site plan being proposed at this time, just changes to the actual ordinance. So this site was rezoned in 1994 to allow for the existing ice arena. Included in your packets are a staff report and minutes from the planning commission review of that original PUD approval. So from scanning that, it appears that the original PUD request did generate a significant kind of deliberation and discussion at that time. From reviewing the minutes, it appeared that kind of the two most prominent concerns at the time were traffic concerns and also the effect that the arena would have on neighboring property values. At that time, Patterson was only a 2-lane street, but has now been expanded to 5 lanes adjacent to that project site. So the applicant's requesting a total of 12 amendments to the PUD, as you can see in their narrative. Those requests focus on increasing the allowed capacity of the project, removing restrictions on what groups and teams can use the facilities, and allowing the sale of alcohol on the premise. As can be seen in the Exhibit B that they provided, the Ice Center has 2 rinks, one with a capacity of just over 1,000 and the other over 800. However, the PUD ordinance requires that any event with an attendance exceeding 1,184 people requires a special event approval from the township. The applicant's requesting that this threshold be increased to 2,000 people in order to accommodate events on both rinks. With such a large capacity increase, I think it'd be helpful for the applicant to provide information that shows the existing parking and how that would be able to accommodate that increased request. The applicant provided an exhibit that shows 391 parking spaces on the property. So our current parking standards require 1 space for every 4 seats for a recreational use or place of assembly. So the 391 spaces would allow for a capacity of 1,564 spaces. So the applicant should speak to how that additional capacity they are requesting would be able to be handled on the site. The applicant is also requesting that a number of restrictions that limit what teams can use the facility to be listed. Currently, it's mostly listed, limited to high school and amateur. So this would allow for collegiate, semi-professional, and professional teams, as well as ice shows to also use the facilities. It'd be helpful to hear from the applicant why these changes are needed, what types of teams they would expect to use the facilities, and if local amateur groups and schools would still be provided with enough ice time as well. I think it'd also be helpful to provide data on how much traffic is generated during a game, and if they see that being increased due to the amendments they are requesting. Kind of the final larger request from the applicant is to allow the sale of alcohol on the premise. And then also they're asking to remove the requirement that a security guard be present for high school games and any event with over 500 people. The applicants informed us that they have received a Class C liquor license from the Liquor Control. They've received a variance on 3 previous occasions to serve alcohol at charity events. So there has been these singular events where alcohol has been permitted. The applicant should provide information on why the security guards are no longer needed, even as they are requesting that the capacity be increased and that they can sell alcohol at the event then. So this is once again an introduction phase to the project. If there are any questions or requests of the applicant, this would be a good time to address those. In the staff report, I list the recommendations that I mentioned regarding what information I believe would be helpful that they provide moving forward. The next phase would be the public hearing for the preliminary development plan review, which would be scheduled once the applicant provides the documents and information that is requested of them tonight.
Thank you, Brian. That was a lot to digest, but very thorough. Appreciate that. Member Merlin, you have something?
Yes, or do we want to let the applicant speak to why he wants the changes before I question a few of them?
Well, we could talk to the applicant first. I was gonna say, do you have any questions of Brian regarding his report so far? Maybe would be the first step, I guess, while it's fresh in our minds.
I take it, Brian, that since this is a preliminary review, you'll be going back over the ordinance you prepared, so we don't have 2 Section 8s in it. With different language in the two.
Yeah, in the original PUD, you mean?
No, in the, your staff report, the PUD that is, the amendment to the PUD that's attached to it. You look at section 8, it appears twice and they're not the same, but they presume to be dealing with the same subject.
Which page are you on, Member Merlin? Because
I think I noticed that.
I think you're looking at the existing PUD.
I was
Yes.
looking at, well, maybe I am, it was attached to,
I think that is the,
So it's PUD ordinance.
Yeah, I believe that's the existing PUD, so that's something that would be cleaned up once we get to that amendment stage then.
okay,
we can blame Planner Cravens for that.
okay. And.
I don't think I've ever said that.
And so very particular questions on compliance with provisions of that PUD, we should wait till a future meeting for. This is a policy discussion of these changes.
That is correct. This is specific to these, to this request, and it's just a preliminary discussion. So.
Yeah, if there's
We-
any
well-
questions or information you want the applicant to provide before the next step, this is the time to ask those, so they have time to provide them before the preliminary plan review and public hearing.
What schools currently use this facility as their home ice?
I'm guessing the applicant will discuss that, Brian. So with that, unless somebody else has another question on Brian, I'll bring the applicant up.
Well, one more question of Brian.
Okay.
Did you talk to the police with respect to any calls to this facility?
I did, I talked to Deputy Dieppe, who's our community policing officer. He said in the last 5 years, they really haven't had any calls because of the use of the site. They have a list of calls, a lot of them are, speeding tickets where it happens in the parking lot and things like that. He said there wasn't really any calls related to this specific use of the site, and he didn't see any major concerns with it.
Okay. All right. Then with that, I would, actually, I'm assuming you haven't spoken to the previous planner about this at all? Any knowledge of any problems or anything in the previous period of time, have you?
Planning Director Cravens?
Well, I'm
you mean, or-
guessing you didn't get in touch with him, but
No.
what about former planners director Peterson? Thank you.
I had not touched base with him yet on it. No, I
Okay.
could just to see if he was aware of any issues since he had been at Cascade, but I have not yet.
Oh, and that's fine. I just was curious if there were any comments there. Okay. With that, I'll ask the applicant to step up, but maybe they can shed some light on some of our questions.
Do you want my
Name and
address
address, please, for the
or
record.
The facility. address?
Whatever.
I'm
address
Tom
you-
Maney, 2550 Patterson Avenue.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Kevin Wood, 2550 Patterson Avenue.
Thank you, sir. All right, guys. I guess we'll probably start with Member Merlin's question down here. I think he asked which high schools are using this as their home ice?
We currently have East Grand Rapids, Forest Hills Central, and Forest Hills Northern Eastern is one team. So we have 3 home high schools.
Okay. Excellent.
And no colleges now, or does Davenport?
We do have some college teams, their club teams for the college. Yeah,
And that's how many besides Davenport?
only Davenport. They have 4 teams. They have 3 men's and 1 women's.
No, that's a club sport there.
Yeah.
Okay. And how much time do they take of a week's ice time?
For both combined,
Yeah,
Davenport practices about 12 hours a week altogether. And the high schools, I know Davenport for sure because I just did that the other day, but it's probably 13 to 15 for the high school.
for high school.
No, altogether, all 3 high schools. Davenport a lot of their teams practice during the day, during the workday. There's one of their teams that practices late night. And the high schools, a couple of them have maybe one practice a week before school. And then their practices are at 3:30 to 5 or 5 to 6:30.
And how many like, how much free ice time is there for people who just want to come versus because you have teachers teaching students and some being pretty
We're pretty booked solid after the workday, from 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock. We're booked pretty solid with the Amateur Hockey Association. And we have a figure skating club that also skates, that rents about 15 hours of ice a week.
and during the day.
They start at 3:30. The only people during the day are Davenport, and then we'll have some open skates and open hockey. And that's open to everybody. I wish we were busier during the day. And the Davenport thing, we didn't know what was in this PUD until we looked into it, because we were looking into the liquor. And that's when we're like, well, we're gonna have to talk about this, because we've had Davenport for years,
And they're an unruly bunch.
No, well, only one. No,
Okay.
Davenport's been really easy. They actually bring less people than the high schools do.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of bringing people, keep the conversation moving. Do you have any shared parking agreements or anything with anybody nearby? I mean, if you're gonna increase your capacity, I guess, do you have concerns about needing more parking, or how do
Well,
you want to?
What it says in the PUD again, we didn't know that was in there either. And we've been doing this for years and we haven't had an issue, with the parking.
Okay.
Like,
So you've been using both rinks simultaneously,
Yes,
and it
yes.
hasn't been an issue to
Right,
have 2,000 people there or close to it.
right. And I don't know if we ever get that many people there,
Sure.
but I know that with the amount of seating in both sides, you could fit that many people in there. But generally we try not to have two big games going on at the same time.
Okay.
I couldn't find it in here anywhere, but what is the total parking spot count now?
391, I believe. Technically, it's supposed to be 396,
Right.
but
It's at the top of the parking map. I missed it the first time
Okay.
through too.
which I think is probably another thing that we'll just say Planner Cravens must have overlooked. So yes, it says the
There
total
is-
number of striped parking spaces shown is 391, and
There are many other parking spots on there that aren't striped.
that aren't striped.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was gonna say there must be, because
Yeah, there's a lot of parallel parking in there too that people do,
okay,
even when there's a lot of open spaces.
okay. Does it sounds like you guys have been operating this way. So really, I mean, what are the
I know one of your concerns was the security. Again,
Yeah.
we probably should have taken a better look at that, but we did have security. Like, I've been there since it opened, but I was just a maintenance guy for I've been a general manager now for 15 or so years, but
Okay.
we don't have issues. There hasn't been issues. And if we have staff and a lot of staff there all the time. So we use our staff as the security, and yet staff had to escort people out occasionally when unruly parents yelling at refs or whatever. But for the most part, there isn't many issues. We had more issues when we first opened than we do now.
Member Merlin?
It just strikes me from past experience in hockey arenas,
Yeah,
at least at the college level, you do get unruly fans from both institutions.
mhm.
And I know in the football, when my son played football at Forest Hill Central, you got some unruly students as well,
Yeah.
between like in East Grand Rapids and a Forest Hill Central.
Right, right. You're 100% right on that. And it was worse back in the day, but now I think things are way more strict. Like, officials now will kick somebody right out, and it's not, I don't know how to say it, but back then that did happen, but now it doesn't because it's not allowed,
It's not allowed on the ice.
or in the stands. Yeah, because there's more eyes making sure everything stays smoothly, because way back in the day, there were problems, but there's not anymore. I don't know. It's not us changing it. It's just not that way anymore. We don't have that happening anymore.
Even in today's world where everyone's mad at everyone.
Nope, it's not. Yeah,
And hockey is a sport where being mad is
yeah,
good
yeah.
if you keep it under control. But
Yep. Our staff is trained to keep an eye out, and we always have extra staff out, and if there are unruly people, they are talked to, and if it doesn't change, they're asked to leave, and if they don't, then that's when we call for backup. And when you say you're going to call the police, most people are like, out, so we don't actually have to do that very often at all.
Are your staff trained in security?
Not by security. They're trained to keep an eye out and not get involved, but make that call if they have to,
And how many times did the security people who you have been required to have ever have to be used?
It's not very often at all.
Are they trained? Are they off-duty police
No,
officers?
no, like I said, they're not trained by any security or anything like that. There are employees that have multiple job responsibilities, and one of them is to keep an eye on the crowd.
So the security guards are your employees?
Yes, yes. There are times where we've had off-duty police there for special occasions, like probably one of those things where we did get a liquor license for something. But if we have, like, we had a alumni Red Wing game there, they wanted security there, so we would get security there, and there was never any issues.
And
I know it sounds hockey, there should be, but it's really
you
been good.
combine hockey, alcohol, and young men, and you have a pretty volatile group.
Yeah. Well, the reason we asked for the alcohol is there's more rinks now that have it that don't. And it would be a nice source of revenue for us, because I think we can handle it, and we could use some more money, because right now it's, hockey business is tough. So.
Trustee Nordhook, you got a question?
Do you have room on site it looks like you would need like 500 parking spots and still have room for, striped spots, and then still have room for snow storage over the winter?
We're pretty maxed out on parking spots,
Okay.
unless we were able to find, no, what we have currently now is about what we could get.
Okay.
I don't think restriping it or anything would add anything. We just don't have any more space.
Thank you.
As far as being on a hockey rink and unruly and whatever, last year I went over to our next door neighbor, which is a very nice old man and wife and woman. And I saw him outside raking his yard, and I said, "Hey, how have we been as a neighbor?" And he's like, "You guys are the best." And he's the one that's literally closest to us. So that was good to hear. And
Member Moxley?
Back to the alcohol thing, I'm not so worried about the young guys who are out there, playing hockey. I'm concerned about parents. Are we talking mixed drinks? Are we talking just beer? What are you looking at?
beer and wine.
Beer and wine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, there's a path from our parking lot to the brewery next door. So they run over there in between periods and whatever. And so, there's a lot of drinking, or people that have been drinking in the building,
They disappear for 20 minutes and then come back.
Yep. They ask our Zamboni drivers to take their time.
Okay.
Hopefully the Zamboni driver isn't going over there.
Right?
Remember happened?
In lieu of actual security staff, has there been any update or investment in surveillance or camera systems in the
We
building?
do have cameras, and we are in the process of getting more cameras. We have 2 cameras over each rink. We have cameras in our concession stand, obviously for employees and cash drawer stuff. We have cameras down the hallways. We have basic cameras in most places, but not in the locker rooms.
Okay.
Yeah, or in the parking lot, and I'd like to get some in the parking lot, so we're working on.
What kind of additional teams are you thinking of bringing in?
We're not planning on adding anything,
Okay.
no.
So just to sum this up, staff is asking that the applicant submit the following information. The first item is regarding how parking will be addressed and if the permitted occupancy is being increased. It sounds to me like what you're stating is there's really not going to be a change.
No,
We're just kind of bringing the rules to
we did
be,
it backwards, right?
yeah. And then number two, additional narrative addressing why there is a need for increased college, semi-professional, professional use. Again, you're saying that these groups are already using the facility. You're not actively pursuing more groups necessarily. We're
Right.
just trying to be in line with what's been happening. How long do you think that has been the program there? Just to get an understanding of.
Well, I think Davenport has probably been there 12, 15 years. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
They started out with one team, and then they went to 3 teams and then the 4 teams, but they've probably been the 4 teams for the last 5 years.
Okay. And then the third thing is data regarding traffic generated during a game. If this will increase due to the proposed amendments. I realized that when the facility was built, Patterson was not a 5-lane road also. But it sounds like you guys aren't really going to be increasing traffic over what you already have. Do we really need a traffic study? What do you guys think about that as far as data regarding traffic?
We've got a 5-lane road there now.
Mm-mm.
We're okay.
I don't think.
I mean, he's telling us he's not making an increase. He's at, yes.
The
Member
only
Brennan.
question I would have is how many, you only have one entrance and exit
Mhm.
from the
Street.
facility now.
Yeah.
But you're also, you're right, what I read is that you're not increasing your people in the stands number, even though you could with the 2,000 number, but you're allowing all your employees and all the other people to be on top of the 1084.
The one rink can hold that many people. So, and that's what I think the PUD was before.
Yes.
So when you have 2 sides going at the same time, we pass that number.
Okay, and how many can sit in the second rink?
800.
800.
863,
So now you're closing in on the 2,000
right?
mark.
And that's why they're asking to have that amended, because it sounds like you're already doing that.
Yeah, well, I wasn't aware.
Right, I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just want to make sure we have the facts out because
Right.
And
Yeah.
both are, the rinks are both of a size that could be used by all the high school.
Mhm. When we first opened, we had one larger rink, which was called Olympic rink.
Right.
And then the other one was your standard NHL size rink. We made the Olympic one into an NHL size, so we have 2.
Now you have 2 NHL size rinks.
Yeah, yep. The Olympic was just 15 feet wider. We thought maybe that's where hockey was gonna go eventually, but nobody wanted to skate on the bigger rink anymore.
No, they wanted to see people flying into the walls.
Well, the figure skaters like the bigger one and the speed skaters, but we don't have speed skaters anymore. And the figure skaters, all their competitions are on the smaller ones, so.
Have you kept track over time how often you have multiple events going on that have pushed that limit? It sounds like you've been doing this for a while without
Yeah.
issue. I'm just wondering what data we would have to show that the frequency of pushing those numbers and.
Out of
that
our
it's fairly
busy
common.
season from October through March, I'd say it probably only 5 or 6 times the whole season that happens. And that's because of 2 high school games, not because of Davenport. Davenport doesn't bring very much.
And if that was to happen, now I'm guessing that's usually in an evening or a weekend.
Yeah, the high school games are normally 8 PM on Friday,
Mhm.
and then on Saturday, they're 3, 6, and 8.
Have you guys ever considered getting an agreement, a shared agreement for parking with like a neighboring business that isn't using their parking lot in those hours?
there really isn't a whole lot of parking around us. Maybe on Star Street, they
There
maybe
could
we
be.
could, that's just a short walk. But I know Schmoes doesn't have much for parking. They use our parking lot once in a while, But the north end of us is just like swamp, and the east end is Powell, and there's no parking there for us,
Okay.
The south end is I don't know what those businesses are, but they have very little parking spots.
Industrial's kind of a road back there too,
Yeah.
isn't it?
But we really don't run into parking very often. Like I said, it's only 4 to 6 times a season. And we try to stagger those. A lot of times it's coming and going, not all at the same time.
Do you ever employ a Kent County deputy
To be there on staff.
just
Yeah.
to be out in the intersection?
We never really asked them to be there. They're there a lot, but we've never asked them. I think that's one of their hangouts is our parking lot. I don't know if they're radaring or if they're taking a lunch break or.
But they're
or what.
not out there to help people
No.
get in and out of the
No, we've never had them do that.
parking lot.
We have a lot of police officers that skate also, so they're a
I
lot,
bet.
yeah.
Okay. This is kind of a tricky one because, it seems like these guys they're coming to us because they're like, hey, we want to be in compliance. I mean, aside from the liquor side, but they're coming in and saying, hey, we want to be in compliance. And, for 15 years, they've been doing it this way and we haven't had any complaints. So I'm not, I don't know that there's much of an issue here if nobody's jumping up and down and reporting anything.
Scott, I guess my question, when this goes to public hearing, I'm assuming the neighbors will have thoughts on this. Have you thought about communicating in advance to neighbors and discussing plans and what you're trying to do?
I guess we haven't thought that far ahead yet.
Brian, this would be noticed to the neighbors, would it not, within 300 feet?
Yep, yeah, the public notice will be sent out to all neighboring properties within 300 feet. So it does look like there's maybe a couple of, apartment complexes within that range, so they would all receive that notice. So there will be definitely a few people receiving it. So I know it might be helpful for them to reach out a little bit, or just, I guess, be aware that there'll be some people that are going to be informed about it.
Okay.
But we not
Those are-
also notify through the school system that use it, like to the families of the hockey players and people who use or have notices of the public hearing in the in the front entryway to this somehow, where they get their opportunity to make comments as the parents of the kids who are playing on it, whether they're in favor of some of these changes or not, particularly the alcohol. who picked up hundreds of beer bottles and alcohol bottles from deep in the backyard from football team parties. And have thrown kids out of my basement more times than I want to recall.
Well, I suppose anything's possible, but our standard is to send out a public notice within 300 feet of the property. So if
300 feet is, that's a football field.
that'll make it halfway to Patterson or to Burton, excuse me. So it'll incorporate the majority of the houses that are next door.
Does that include Kentwood too?
It does.
It's not, well, yes, so it'll go across the street into Kentwood, yes. So those 3 houses next door, the apartments across the street, it'll get into Wood Creek a little ways, not very far. I'm just doing some quick measuring here.
Foothills Estates.
Yeah, it'll go to Foothills. you
But
know,
it just strikes
you know.
me as if that is, in today's world, 300 feet is no notice at all.
And that's what it is. It's a notice of property owners within 300 feet. So that's, I mean, if it, yeah, a discussion to change the policy is I guess, something we can discuss. But that's the policy in place right now. So if we want to do something special here, I guess now would be the time to bring that up. But remember, Norduck, what were you going to say?
I just have a question for Brian. Do we have any other facilities in the township, 2,000 seat facilities with liquor license?
Not off the top of my head. I probably have to double check that though. But I can't think of any, like I said, off the top of my head for any that large.
What about Nodos? Do you know how many they can seat?
I don't think it's anywhere close to that, but I could check probably with our building department. You know, they'd have seating capacity numbers for it.
Okay, thank you.
And the Fowling Warehouse only seats what, 700?
Yeah, Fowling Warehouse.
What about,
Yeah,
they used to have that, was it Cascade Commons area by Meyer? Did they?
Mhm.
Oh, that's gone now. It's a bank. Never
And
mind.
that was less than 300.
Was it?
Could I ask Brian before the next time we get together, that the notion of what do other ice rinks in the county have in terms of liquor, keep liquor being sold? I mean, we have those hotels also down at Patterson and 28th Street, which have caused significant problems for the past year. Now we're selling more liquor. Now, that is not an audience that mixes, or a demographic that mixes between people who come to the hotels.
Well, there
except
are
maybe
teams that
parents.
come from out of town that stay in the hotels.
Yeah.
But they're youth mainly, so you wouldn't have the liquor problems with them.
You have youth?
Well, most of our business is youth skating,
Yeah, but when you say youth, what ages are you talking?
under 18.
You got a lot of liquor problems under 18 in Forest Hills.
Yeah. Well, there's high schools that will come for a weekend and play a couple different of the local high schools, and they'll stay in the hotel.
And those hotels also have a lot of more drug use than they used to have in them. I had a friend who stayed in one, because that's where his company put him up for training exercise. And he couldn't stay because of the drug smell. And we had to have a special police unit tasked to clean that area up.
I know what hotel you're talking about, and that's not one that's used by any of our users.
No.
Guys, I have a question. Do you have any idea what the capacity of any of the other neighboring rinks that you would consider yourselves competing against, so to speak, what their capacity is, and how many parking spaces they have?
You'd be a better one for that. He's worked at many rinks, so that have sold alcohol and has not.
I'm just curious. I mean, I don't know that serving alcohol is going to drive a lot more patrons to your facility, but in the event that it does, I guess I'd like to have an understanding of what we're getting into.
So down in Kalamazoo, Wings West, they have a restaurant, so their parking lot's double in size.
Okay.
But if you took just the spots for the rink, it's
Mhm.
smaller, and they have 2 rinks.
Okay.
And they have an alcohol license for the building.
Okay.
You can go in the restaurant, have a mixed drink, and bring it with you.
Gotcha.
So
All right. What about other rinks in King County?
would be
There's Southside.
up in Rockford. They have a small pub. And when they got their license, they didn't license for the rink. They just licensed for that area.
Okay.
And it seats probably 75 or 100 people. That's a single sheet rink with a soccer field. And they park everywhere up there.
Okay.
They're definitely over capacity.
Okay.
And like when you go in there for a tournament, like
Mhm.
their little lounge is full. So.
Okay.
Absolutely. And then the rest of the rinks, like Southside does a lot of tournaments with the AAA program out there. And they actually get a liquor license through the West Michigan Sports Commission. And the West Michigan Sports Commission actually staffs it for them when they do the weekend events. And then it's a 50-50 split on profits.
Okay.
So,
How much parking do they have over there, you think?
They have less than we do.
yeah, I would say it's a big square, but it's either equal or less than what we have.
They're
Okay.
at 100th Street and 131, it's the Byron Center.
Okay.
It's probably, I don't know, we might have 3/4 of the parking to do.
Okay. All right. This is good information. Anybody else have any other thoughts on this? It sounds like it might, based on reading the history here regarding the original approval in the 90s, which I'm sure is going to get, probably had way more excitement than this is going to get. But when public notices go out, sometimes there's a tendency for people to panic. And so it might be appropriate for you guys to try and stay ahead of that. And perhaps putting a sign on the door, I would think would potentially benefit you to let, if you know the set date, and Brian can communicate that with you guys, obviously, when it's officially announced, but it might not be bad for you to let your constituents know that this is coming up, because if you could get some people here in support of you, that might help offset some of the people that will be coming in the door concerned with what you're doing. And I think there will be a lot of people that I could be wrong on that, but it tends that these types of conversations tend to bring out a lot of concerns that, you know, none of us had thought about. Member Merlin.
The one thing I'd also suggest is that between you and Brian, I'd actually like to see some factual evidence from the Kent County Sheriff's Office in terms of when you do have events, how many complaints have arisen over the last, let's say, X number of years, and how much drunk driving has occurred, so that we get a sense, because that's the one that's going to, in my estimation, that's the one that's going to cause more
Sure,
heartburn.
but if they've only served alcohol 5 times in the last 25 years, 26 years, something like that,
Yeah, you wouldn't have the
you wouldn't have any drunk
driving.
driving information
have the
related
drunk
to their
driving.
events.
But when I asked 6 months after the Fowling warehouse opened, they said, "Oh, we haven't seen any new problems at all." And I said, "Well, have you had any check? Have you had like a speed stop or a drinking, pulling people over?" "No, we haven't done anything." "So how do you expect to?" So the question is, have they had any instances of complaints on the facility, or being called out to the facility, or
Brian,
going near?
Brian, are you there?
Yep.
Do you think you could get something in writing from the sheriff's department, or is that something the applicant needs to do that would indicate how many incidents they've reported in the last 20 years or something?
How many times have you
Yeah.
responded to this address?
Yeah, how many response?
I've got something already in the last 5 years from Deputy Dieppe that I can share at the next meeting. I'll see if you can go back much further than that. Like I said, he didn't really have any concerns or calls here in the last 5 years at least.
Okay, Member Merlin, are you comfortable with a 5-year reach, or do you want it to go further?
5-year reach is fine with me. The world
Okay.
has changed in the last 5 years for weird and unnatural reasons.
I
But
think
you're
we
saying
can.
he had no call outs?
He said none that concerns with the events going on there. So like I said, they've had like calls for suspicious persons or speeding tickets where they end up at that site. He said there weren't really any involving the actual use of the site, but that's something I'll confirm with him.
So no fights. What's the world coming to?
And the worst
When I
is,
was in high school, we had fist fights all the time.
yeah,
That used to be my
they,
personality.
this year they caught someone that was on the run, you just happen to be running across a parking lot. And then maybe 2 years ago, we had someone stealing out of locker rooms, so
Yeah,
it's.
that's not what I was concerned about.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, I've, from my perspective, and I'm just one of, I guess we're 8 right now. We're usually 9. Tonight, I guess we're even less than that, but I just one perspective. I think I would prepare for a public hearing, and I don't think I have any additional questions.
Yeah, the other item I would prepare for the hearing would be that you really don't have any intent to invite more usage during times where parents can take their kids, or when figure skating can occur, or so that, because the other thing I could see is if they had plans to expand the usage of this, because I had someone work for me who was a coach at one of the teams of youth hockey. And, they were practicing at odd hours of the very early morning to get some ice time. It was very competitive to get ice time.
Yeah, that has also changed. We do have 1, maybe 2. They don't even go the whole season anymore, but they did practice 5:30 to 7 in the morning once a week. And now we're not as busy as we used to be. So there's more ice in the afternoon for them.
I guess I don't see a reason to try and penalize an operation that appears to be running smoothly.
Agreed.
So that's kind of, my position right now, but let's see how it plays out. Let's see the public hearing process. And Brian, is there anything you want us to ask them before they leave?
No, I think were able to touch on a lot of those comments that I had in my staff report. So I'll work with Deputy Diepa to get that kind of 5-year report to you guys. Was there anything else specifically you wanted to see from them before the public hearing?
I don't think there is. Everybody here is nodding that they're content, I think. When do you foresee this coming back around?
So assuming, there's nothing else that you really need to get into us then I think it would be that second meeting in December, which is December 20 is when we'd be able to schedule it.
Okay, I'll still be chairman then. All right. I was hoping you were gonna say January. I was gonna laugh, but okay, I'll be ready. So maybe it'll be a full room, maybe
You're
it
tough,
won't.
Scott.
We'll see what happens. So I try to run a good meeting.
We're
You played
definitely
hockey
willing to do our
before,
part
haven't you?
and go door to door to talk to the neighbors too, if we know which places are within.
300
Yeah.
feet. So,
Yeah.
on Wood Creek Drive, there's really aren't any houses there. I don't think, it stops before, I think that cul-de-sac's 400 and some feet down, and you could go online to a GIS and just draw the line out, and that's all I was doing. So
Within 300 feet of the property line.
of the property line. So, make sure you're measuring from the
Every
closest
corner.
point
Yeah,
of your property,
yeah,
but
yeah.
all the businesses on Star and Powell
Mhm.
Moving, which I don't think you're gonna have any concerns with an industrial neighbor, but I would concentrate on those apartments, foothills. When I read through the minutes from 1994, I think it was, that seemed to be where a lot of the comments that were questioning it came from. You had support from all over the community, but there were definitely concerns in that area. Now, Patterson was also a different road then too. So, we're talking back then, I think it was 2 lanes, and now it's 5. So that's going for you. Yes, Member Merlin.
Just a totally off the subject question. How many of the kids coming into the ice rink, for example, for practices and otherwise, come by bicycle?
0.
A lot of gear to carry over there on a bicycle.
No, and the reason I asked that was for the pathway bridge over the,
I see where you're going with that.
That's why they don't, because there is no pathway.
Oh, you think that's the order that, yeah, because I'd heard, the
No way
question
I would
is
let my
whether,
kid. He's 22, almost 23, and I would still not let him ride his
Yeah, I've
bike
never
on
seen a
that bridge.
bicycle at our place,
Yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
okay,
but we may, I'm not sure if anybody comes from across the street to open skate or not, if they walk across, but I wouldn't recommend walking across
Mm-mm.
Patterson.
Not 5 lanes of traffic.
I just have, my two concerns are the parking spaces. I don't want to set precedent for everything else behind you over the next 10 or 15 years. And I'm a little concerned with the alcohol with high school teams and, you know, I mean, I understand alcohol is a big thing, but I think the crowd we're playing to might not be where we want to go with that. Brats and hot dogs with that age group. That's where you make the money on them. But those are just a couple concerns I want to throw out there for you. I don't know how you can address them. But
With the alcohol, I mean, you would obviously have trained staff that would
Yeah,
make sure everyone is ID'd
yeah, exactly.
when they're purchasing.
We would do everything that we need to do to make sure it's all done right and that nobody's drinking that's not supposed to be drinking.
Yes, Member Moxley?
Yeah, I'm not worried about the kids drinking. I'm worried about the parents drinking.
It's
While they're sitting there
it's-
waiting for the
yeah.
kids to finish.
That
the
was,
game.
that was a concern of ours back, way back, but there's more rinks now that open now that all have that and they're not having the issues. The last thing I want is a parent to come up and, well, I gotta sit here for an hour while my kid practices and just put away some drinks and then drive their kid home. We're not gonna want that.
Well, I have to admit, after hearing everything from you, I have a different frame of mind on this, and I'll go back to the drawing table, I guess, and think this through. Because I came in with a different mindset. I guess threw a curveball at him. Yes, Member Merlin.
one question you just mentioned. When would liquor sales be allowed?
Yeah, special events.
Okay, it's not gonna be open like all afternoon or evening every day.
Oh, no, yeah, this is more of your,
Are you talking the beer and wine sales, or because the liquor license is a full liquor license? We don't intend on selling liquor unless it's a private function, i.e. a wedding,
Well, liquor being hard liquor,
hard liquor.
but beer and wine,
Beer and wine will be sold when the concession stand, because everything is operating out of the concession stand. So when the concession stand is open,
and when is it open?
roughly right now, 4:30 to 9, Monday through Friday. And on the weekends, 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. Sunday's a little shorter because we don't have the fans in there late. It's private skates.
but it will be just beer and wine. Like he's saying, maybe if we have a wedding reception or something, that's when maybe the liquor.
Member Nordhook, I might have an idea that might help with the parking concern. I'm gonna just throw this out there, but what if we asked the applicant to present a list of neighboring rinks, say in Kent County, how many sheets of ice they have, what the capacity of the building is, and how many parking spaces they have. And then whether or not they serve alcohol on site. And if they provided that information for the other rinks in the county, it would give us something for comparison. Does that seem like a good start to try to,
more information, the better.
Seems great to me.
Yeah,
is everybody,
I agree.
do you think that's something you guys could put together? I would think that from Google, you could count the parking spaces almost.
We know all the rink managers in
Yeah.
town, so they would help us out with that too.
Okay, why don't you try to provide that information to Brian prior to our next powwow, and he'll put it in our packet so we can digest it a little before we're here.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts before we let these gentlemen go? There's no action now to be taken.
I do have one question.
Yes.
Have
Member
you-
Dare.
Have you had many instances where, because I know like with tournaments, you want to try to draw the tournaments in to your arena. Have you been turned down, or do they pick different locations because
Yeah,
we don't have a
every-
liquor
every
license
year.
yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we just lost, he doesn't even know this. We just lost a tournament through USA Hockey. That's adults. That comes around in May when the rink business is slow. Because obviously we don't know the timetable or if this is going to happen. And that's partly, it's sponsored by Labatt's. So there's stuff out there now that they go to places that serve beer and wine. So not the kids stuff, but you're getting more into the adult stuff that are looking for places to go during the off season.
I appreciate you guys being upfront and open about this with us and letting us know how things have been going. And I think we can all work together to try and move this along, hopefully. So let's get that scheduled, the public hearing scheduled, get that information to Brian, connect with him, and we'll move forward from there.
And with the police information and that, you've got competitive conditions and you've got past history. So we've got facts rather than just.
That's correct.
Yep.
And hopefully, hopefully if you put some signage up, you'll get some support from your patrons, to combat anything the neighbors throw at you.
If I can
Yes.
just add one thing about the parking. So I'm Chuck Hoyt. I'm from Naderveld. I help these guys out with the application specific to the parking, right? So I know this is a bit of an unusual situation in that we're almost doing it backwards, so to speak, with regards to the PUD. Where typically somebody comes in with a PUD and is projecting data like, oh, these are the other rinks of how much parking that they would have, or here's what other sort of businesses like this would have. Well, we have really good data for this. We have 20 to 30 years worth of use. What better data could there be, right? And again, there's no increase anticipated in intensity of use. It's simply just making sure that the ordinance is brought up to what they've been operating under for the last 20 to 30 years. So I just wanted to make sure that that was sort of understood, and that, yeah, we have this parking and the numbers might not add up right, but there's hard data from the last 20 to 30 years specific to this spot. So there's no sort of forecasting or comparisons that would be any better than what they have. So certainly willing to gather that data, I think, and we'll be willing to help out our client on that. But just a reminder, we think that that's probably the best data that you can use.
No, I understand where you're coming from. And if the alcohol side of this wasn't in the equation, I would yield to your comments there. But my concern is that by adding the serving, does that cause maybe more parents and people to come watch because they can grab a beverage while they're there and hang out, and that might drive those numbers up, and that I think is a valid concern.
For sure. And I don't want to speak on behalf of the operators here, but I don't think that it becomes a destination for anybody beyond that would be coming there anyway. I think it's just an amenity for those that are there, similar to having the ability to get a beer at a movie theater these days. I don't know that more people are going to the theater because there's beer there, because you can get a beer a lot of places. It's, oh, I'm at the movie theater, I can get a beer here. That's just sort of a nice amenity. So I think that's typically going to be the case, and whatever way we can document that, we'll try to assist in doing that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anyone else have any thoughts? No? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we will move on to Article 10, which is old business. And that is the Thornapple Point Stormwater Update. Brian, I believe you're giving the update, right?
Yep, so in your
I'm not prepared.
packet there, you'll see an email from our engineer, Mike Barovitz. So he did make it out to that site then, Thornapple Point, and the applicant or contractor did make those changes that they said they would, adding some kind of berms and swales, basically to get the water to where it was supposed to be going. So Mike's email there, he says it looks like they, completed the work they said they would there. He does make the note that since it is the areas that are kind of active construction sites still, to really have that full protection, you'll need that vegetation to come in, which likely won't happen until next spring. So he has to know if there is a large rain event or something like that. It's something we will want to at least keep an eye on to see if they do have to come back and make any repairs.
Okay, I read the report and looked at the drawing. Member Merlin, you had something?
I just have a question. heard everything you just said, Brian. With regard to the gentleman who owns the adjoining land,
Mhm.
who got his septic system wiped out.
Well, for clarity, his land is not actually adjoining. He's actually beyond adjoining, but I know who you're referring to. Yes.
Is he safe now?
Well, based on the information, it would appear that he is, but I have not personally spoken with him yet. And I'm.
But Brian, would you say he's safe now?
I guess I would say that, site should be acting like it's supposed to. Like Scott said, his property isn't immediately adjacent. There's a lot of land between this site and his home. So I don't know where all that water that lands in between this site and this home will go. But, at least the stormwater on this development should be acting and detained like it should be on the plans there.
Member Nordhook, you have something to
Trying get my
add?
directions straight here. I did go out and look at the repairs that they did. And I'll say it this way, as I'm looking at the end of the cul-de-sac, the left side is built up nice and it looks as though water is going to go where they intend it to go. On the right side, it still looks low to me, where it could jump that little flat rolled curb. So I would like to kind of keep an eye on that with the next heavy rain and see if it's getting in that one lonely little catch basin at the end without jumping the curb on the right side, which I guess would be the west side. No, south side.
Outside.
South
side.
side. There you go. See?
Okay. And based on my drawing here, looking at this, the flow of that water crossed through approximately 800 feet of neighboring property before it arrives at this particular person's septic system. So there's quite a bit of distance covered when it, so I think it takes a pretty good event for the water to make it that far, because it's going through a forest for a good portion of that.
But it did make it through there.
But it
this
did,
summer.
it did, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt.
Because you have a long straightaway and it just goes downhill.
Yeah, it appears it came through with some force too, but
We'll take
Yeah.
a ride out there next real heavy rain, see what it's doing.
and I'll try to connect with them and see if they have any reports as far as the last few heavy rains, what they've witnessed. So,
That's fine. I just want to protect
right.
our resident.
Brian, I'm assuming you haven't had any communication with the resident at all, have you?
I have not, no.
Okay.
Actually, Brian, it might be good reaching out to him yourself.
Sure. I don't know if I have his contact info. I think he's gone through Scott before, but.
I
that'd be
will.
fine, too.
I can probably find, I think I can find her contact information. I think I know somebody who has their contact information. So I'll explore, like I said, I'll try to make communication there. So,
And whoever, if they are not in town right now, they've got to have left someone.
well, I think they're around. I drove by there the other day on the water side and they were clearly there, but I wasn't going to walk up the hill to say hi. So I'll approach from land and give it a try that way. The water's a little too cold right now to take a swim. So,
You don't have a landing craft, you can.
I don't, we've thought about that though. That would be a neat thing to own, but we don't own any equipment like that. I do have a friend who has a piece of equipment like that, but it'd be too difficult to get it out here on the Thorn Apple. All right. Any other business? No, let's see. At the next meeting, I think we have a accessory building on the docket, if I'm not mistaken, Brian, is that
Yep. Yeah, we have a special use permit for our December 6th meeting.
okay? And then I think
have
we
a
should
bill.
talk about Round Hill a little more? Or
I think we should.
is that,
We said we were going to talk about it.
We
tonight,
did.
But we haven't had a chance to talk to the attorney unless you have with Mr. Homier.
Okay, well, the Round Hill group, yeah, we'll have a meeting and discuss that as a Round Hill committee, how we want to proceed. The other item I was going to bring up for our next meeting was we, a while back, had talked about bylaws for the planning commission. And I think that we should, since we only have the one agenda item at the next meeting, that would be a good time to bring that off the table and kind of talk about that a little. So I'll make sure there's some information in the next packet, if not sooner, regarding that. I'll try to dig into that on Wednesday at work. I can probably carve some time out for that and get that information out to you guys, and then we can try to sift through that. And if we have time to talk about Round Hill, we'll do that too. So, but that I think is what December 6th looks. It is December 6th, right, Brian? Is that?
Yep, correct.
Okay. All right. With that, any other business, anybody? No? I'd take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support. Second. Oh,
We have a motion by member Deering with support from member Rappin and member Merlin.
Oh, thank
All
you.
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed? Great. We're adjourned. Thank you, Brian. Have a good night. Hope you feel better soon.
Thanks, you guys too.
Thanks, Brian.
I thought that worked out really well. We did not have any problems. I was a little concerned with the slide.